President Trump yesterday appointed Bill Pulte as acting director of national intelligence. Pulte, who leads the Federal Housing Finance Agency, has no background in intelligence, defense, or national security. But he is a fierce Trump loyalist who has pushed for mortgage fraud cases against public officials the president views as his political enemies, including New York Attorney General Letitia James, Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California, and Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook. Yesterday, some Republican senators were critical of the president's new appointment.
Your reaction to Bill Pulte's nomination for Director of National Intelligence? The president just announced it.
My understanding is the Senate doesn't have a role in confirmation of an acting director, but
would you like one?
I see no evidence of any qualifications for that job.
Well, we don't need a weaponized DNI. We need professionals. If he's somebody that won that position permanently, he's got, as you all know, a lengthy road ahead of him.
We have 4 more weeks with Director Gabbard as the DNI, and I look forward to implementing last year's Intelligence Authorization Act with her to implement wide-ranging reforms that will shrink the DNI and take it back to its original intent to provide a mere coordinator or process role for the intelligence community. I have no observations on the matter.
He has no observations on the matter of Pulte's appointment. That's Republican Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas, who is the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, dodging that question about the appointment of Bill Pulte. President Trump naming Pulte in an acting role means Pulte will not have to face senators for a confirmation hearing, possibly giving him more freedom to pursue the president's false claims about the 2020 election, among other things. That was something Tulsi Gabbard was focused on before she announced her resignation last month to care for her husband, who has cancer. Mark Pauley-Meropoulos, let's bring you back into the conversation here. As someone who has served the country for most of his adult life in the CIA, just your thoughts on someone not only who has no experience with intelligence, but also who clearly views his first job is to be loyal to President Trump and to go after his political enemies. He's already shown that in his current job, overseeing now 18 American intelligence agencies.
So, Willie, when I first heard this, actually, I think I first read it on X, I thought it was a joke. I mean, the housing guy, this is a preposterous appointment. And, the kind of what went through the ranks of the former officials like myself and even current ones as well, as this is something that really should be looked at with some alarm. I mean, a weaponized DNI, by the way, not my comment right there, that's from Senate Majority Leader Thune, is something that should scare a lot of Americans. This would be Tulsi Gabbard on steroids and then some. Obviously, this is a political hack. He's made his name for himself in going after Trump's political enemies. And the intelligence community and the intelligence chief, the DNI, has a lot of power, could do a lot of harm. I'd note that it's about 210 days where he can stay in this position. He does not need Senate confirmation, as we know. And so, there is significant concern right here. And I do think of old colleagues in the intelligence community who are looking at this and shaking their heads. And, of course, what about our allies overseas who also have great concern over this? Are they going to share intelligence? There's a lot of questions here. One key note, though, and you did run a clip of Senator Cotton, who is the chair of CISI, and he made his points very clear there. He wants to see a Office of DNI that shrunk. Perhaps back to its original, intent back in 2005. And so it'll be interesting to see if he works with Pulte to do so. And that would kind of fall in the line of what Cotton wants. Cotton clearly is not thrilled with this appointment, but perhaps he can work for him. The best case scenario is that's what this appointment means. Worst case, of course, is that it's a weaponized DNI, and Americans should be fearful of that.
Yeah, some in Washington want the office shrunk or even eliminated altogether. But we should note, by law, the person who is DNI must have, quote, extensive national security experience. Bill Pulte, of course, has zero national security experience. And Claire, I mean, that's because that's not what Trump wants. I mean, Pulte is, frankly, per people I've spoken, not very well liked in the administration. He and Scott Bessent nearly got into a fight at a dinner last year. He was blamed for causing a lot of chaos with some of the prosecutions, whether it's Tish James or Adam Schiff. He's the one who reportedly provided the Trump as Jesus meme to Trump when he got in trouble with that a few weeks back. But Trump doesn't care about any of that. He cares about Pulte out there fighting, going after his enemies, and perhaps continuing what Tulsi Gabbard had started, relitigating 2020 and perhaps, creating a new path to meddle with 26 and 28.
You know who probably hated this appointment as much as anybody else? Todd Blanche. Because at the end of the road of all of this stuff, there has to be facts and evidence. So if this guy is being put there to try to supercharge some effort to expose some massive fraud in previous elections, they can't do that without evidence. And guess what? There is no evidence. There have been so many efforts to try to find evidence, so many efforts to try to uncover some fraud that occurred in the election process involving elections and Donald Trump. There is no evidence. So what this guy's going to do is kind of try to gin up something where there are no facts to support it. And that lands on Todd Blanche's desk, and that's a huge headache for him. The other thing I would note here is this guy can't be confirmed, will never be confirmed. And so are we now entering the era where Trump, and by the way, Todd Blanche, I don't think he could be confirmed either. And he's getting near the end of his acting time. Are we entering the era where our government is run by Donald Trump and everybody around him is acting? Nobody has been confirmed by the United States Senate. That would not surprise me. And how dangerous that is for our country, because that means he can put any unqualified person in any position he wants. Some would argue he's already done that. I think they're right about some of his cabinet positions. But I don't think Donald Trump has any intention of putting Bill Pulte in front of the United States Senate or Todd Blanche at this point.
And he knows he can do plenty of damage in 210 days. That's a pretty long stretch for an acting title. Retired CIA officer Mark Polymeropoulos. Mark, thanks so much as always. Good to see you.